I'll preface this short chat to all of you listening that this will only whet your appetite to get to know Marilyn better. So maybe we'll have to have a longer conversation another time.
I'd love that. That would be super.
So, Marilyn, anyone familiar with the spectrum of your songs has to wonder what sets a person up to be able to craft the messages, melodies, and arrangements such as you've done. Do you have some musical stepping stones from your early years to help us see what might have paved the way for you?
Indeed, I do. Indeed, I do. I started out singing probably before I could talk. I was just one of those noisy kids, but I loved to sing and I annoyed my folks, I'm sure, and certainly my older sister by singing around the house when I was just a toddler. So when I was 6, my mom heard that the Congregational Church down the street was starting a children's choir, the Cherub Choir. So she trotted my sister and me down to join it. And well, we both loved it. My sister still sings in her church choir. And it became such an influence on my life. I adored it. I truly did. The church had a wonderful music program. And we were the very first thing we learned in that little choir was a Bach chorale. And we must have melted every heart in this huge church. This little children's choir singing, "Come, sweetest death, come, blessed rest." It's like, oh, but, and that it still can bring tears to my eyes, recalling this beautiful, simple chorale that is not heard very much for possibly obvious reasons. Um, but it's gorgeous. And so I spent every Thursday evening and every Sunday of my life from the time I was 6 until I was graduated from high school. So I was 18 in choir, in that choir. But not only that choir, I was kicked out of the junior high school chorus because I was talking. This has happened more than once in my life. And then certainly involved in my high school choir a great deal. And continuing, with church choir. And the music that was chosen was always wonderful, wonderful. And even in my high school choir, and Mrs. Hutchison was our choir director, and she was rigorous. She demanded excellence. And if something wasn't really, really well rehearsed and ready, we wouldn't perform it, no matter what had been planned. And that set up, um, that was a wonderful grounding, all of those things, both. And I loved church. I loved going to church, but I loved it because of the music. I don't think I listened to one sermon. Sorry. and for years and years, I didn't even really know what the what the basis of that church was. I was there for the music because that was my connection to spirituality, to divinity. It was through the music and always has been. And so those are really core to me, just to my being, both music and the importance of that which is greater than we are, whatever,
Absolutely.
whatever we call ourselves. So I think, and then there were, well, anyway, so those are the stepping stones. I went on and studied music for a little while, first at Redlands, just a great music program, and then at USC, also with a great music program. But I bombed out, 18 units short of my bachelor's, because I could see that all I was going to be able to do was to be a high school music teacher. And that was not in the cards for me. That had no appeal at all. I,
Understand.
I just wanted to sing. And I was just, and there wasn't a path for me to do that. I wasn't a solo singer ever, nor did I ever want to be. And, so I
Yeah.
left, did
So,
another.
right. So I know that you went on to have your career, and then what was happening with the music all of that time?
Well, those were desert years in many ways, and in some ways not, of course. But certainly choral music didn't happen for 20 years. There was a little chunk in there that I returned for a little while. But I did learn the recorder and played recorder with some friends at that. So I became an occupational therapist in mental health because healing also is this big pull for me. And I was clear in my life that if I wasn't going to sing, I needed to be involved somehow with healing. And so that's what I did. And it was perfect fit. It was great. I loved it. And there was this one job in the inpatient psych unit, and there were three of us who were concerned about our weight. And and so we decided, and one of them was this wonderful flute player, Jim, and he was terrific. And it was his idea. He says, "Well, why don't you see? I'm going to hand you a recorder, see how you do, and let's just play music." So Joan and I, my friend Joan and I, joined Jim. He pretty much taught us, and we played recorder every every lunchtime then for I don't know several years, and it was so fun. It was once again making music in a group, which was just lovely. And um, I have to tell you, there was one poor guy who came in, and he had been admitted because he was having some hallucinations, and he was worried, and he was a dear person, and he was in the room across the hall from the empty room where we would rehearse. And he came out later one afternoon. He says, he says, I haven't been hearing things before, but I have to tell you, I've suddenly begun to hear music. So you're not making it up. It's
Yes.
oh,
So, did you drop some weight during that time? Because it's really hard to play the flute and
and eat.
eat lunch at the same time.
Um, I probably made up for it at dinner. I don't remember, but I didn't care. We had such a good time.
Yeah, that sounds fabulous. So,
It was great. And I also found Balkan dancing during that time and got very, very involved in those wonderful rhythms and those wonderful harmonies. So that was, yet another harvesting and another theme to fold in, which is great.
yeah, don't you think all those constructs of rhythm and harmony and cadence, all of that creates this framework that then you were able to capitalize on in your later years of songwriting, which I want to get to in a minute. But before I do that, how did you ever hear about Threshold Choir and how did that come into your life?
Well, that was totally wonderful. We had started a rounds group here in Santa Barbara, three of us, and gathered quickly a group of eight of us who loved to sing. Most of us could read music, not everybody. And we had two tiny round books that a friend had, one of the ones that one of the original three of us. And so we started learning rounds and singing rounds together, and it was so much fun. Well, at one point, my friend Nan um, was going to go up to a wedding in up in Marin County somewhere, and she was our wonderful song finder more than anybody, and so she called somebody that she knew. I don't know how she made that first connection, to see if there was a rounds group up there that she could connect to. And whoever she called said, well, I'm not in town anymore, but Kate Munger is there. So let me give you her number. So Nan connected with Kate, and there was an immediate, like connection. So this was before Threshold Choir. This was in 1998. And so Nan invited Kate to come sing with us the next time she was down here because Kate had family close by in Los Olivos or Los Osos, one of those close by. And so she did. And we fell in love with her. She fell in love with us. And that was so much fun. So every time she would come down, she would figure out, luckily it would include a Tuesday night. She'd come sing with us. Well, she was teaching her rounds. And so I said, well, like, would you help us? Would you give us a workshop on teaching on how to write rounds? And she said, no. She said, no, she wouldn't. But she would give us a clue. She would give us the way to do it. And it was great. It was to I'll give it to everybody because it really works. You take a little recorder of some kind. My phone would do it now. And you just find the first phrase. You just find some little melody you like and some words to go with it. Just some place to start. Well, you record it like 6 times, one after the other after the other. Then you play it and find the second line that can go with it. And once you do that, you erase the whole thing, you record the 2, and then do the same thing, like 6 times. And then you find the 3rd and maybe a 4th, if it lends itself. And it was so much fun it was like turning on a faucet for me. Absolutely. And by the time Kate came again, I had 8 rounds, and some of them were good.
Were the rounds the first songs that you wrote then?
Yeah. No. No. They were the first rounds that I wrote, certainly. It had started maybe 10 years before when I first came to Santa Barbara, found a women's spirituality group. And here were all my friends. I had been in Santa Barbara for 2 years and met one person. I had one friend in Santa Barbara. And I knew that my friends were here someplace, but I couldn't find them. And then I connected with this circle of women, and here was this whole group of like-minded women, and they were wonderful, and we sang wonderfully together. Although we didn't at first, even though in the beginning we invited the directions and the below and above to come dance in our circle, sing and dance in our circle. And I said to Jackie, the leader, but Jackie, we don't sing. So how come? It's like, how can we invite, these big entities in to sing if we're not singing? And so she said, okay, find us some songs. So I set about trying to, couldn't find many. And there was one, Halloween was coming up. This is one of the cross-quarter days and a sacred time, and it's like there was no appropriate song. And so I complained to her, and she says, well, write one. And I said, what? And she said, yes, I think you can. Well, another faucet turning. I didn't know I could do that. I had never written anything. And what happened was I was on my way to my friend's house in Pacific Grove, and this little song came. And it came, and I just sang it over and over and over all the way up so I wouldn't forget. And the minute I walked in the door, I called Jackie, my friend, and sang and said, hang up, I need to put this on your answering machine so we have it. So she did, and so I did. And that song is still sung on that day, and it's a sweet song. It's a nice song.
Well,
I could tell you the words.
oh yeah, go ahead.
The veil between the worlds is lifted tonight. All manner of mystery is revealed. The veil between the worlds is lifted tonight. We open our sight to see.
That sounds so much like you. That was just like paving the way for your songs that came later, it seems like to me.
Well, Annie, they all come from somewhere, inside. They all do. Um, None of them really come from outside. They don't. So they do. It's as if, well, I've maybe said this before. I don't feel that they're mine, really. Um, I feel like a radio receiver, and that when I'm tuned right, and when I can find the right station, then a song will come clearly. Um, often, often, the songs almost always song the melody, the beginning melody and words will come together. It just comes as a package. But then my work is cut out because then I need to hone it, and I need to, make sure that the harmonies fit, and that takes some doing. And I've gotten better at that, I think. I hope. And it's such a joy. The whole process is such a joy.
So do you feel like your station is tuned in these days, or I've heard you say the tide is out sometimes
Right.
you're not
Right.
in that space. Where are you right now with that?
Oh, let's see. There's a small tide. There's a small tide lapping. But here was another thing. At one point, um, after the second faucet turning, which was Kate, and the rounds and the songs started coming, um, there was this woman who heard Needed and Equal. I don't know, you know that song, maybe.
Yeah, it's a great song.
Well, she heard that and she came to me and she said, okay, I'm a creativity coach and I've coached people in New York and in Hollywood. And I think you've got it, whatever it is. And I'm going to be your creativity coach. Well, I didn't think I needed a coach. I didn't feel like I was doing anything. It's like, who are you? Who are you to do this? And so I fought her at every step, and she would not give up, and she was a kick. And she would give me homework. And she said, okay, if you are writing songs, if you are a musician, what do musicians do? They practice. So if you're going to write songs, you are going to write a song every day. You write a song every day, you write it down, and make it about the hardest thing that you can think of,
What
the
a
most
great
challenging.
task. Yeah.
Totally. And so, of course, I humped and thought, but then I started doing it, and then it was fun. And it was really fun. And it could change my mood, if I was angry or if I was upset about something or if I was, like, oh, life is getting hard. I'm in a hard spot. Well, I'd start a song that way. And by the end of it, I'd be laughing because there's somewhere in the process would be, I don't know, it would just shift things. And so it was so much fun. So I have these little post-its that are about this big that a friend in Zurich sent me. And they're, they have about 4 staves on them of music lines. And that's what I wrote them all down on. And I still do, except now I kind of skip that part sometimes and just go directly to finale and put it in finale and fiddle around with it.
Yeah. And that obviously has led to you being very prolific. I mean, we've looked at your songs in the repertoire and you have 28 of them in there right now. And I'm wondering in that collection of songs, are there any of those or a couple of those that are particularly precious to you or that you hope people are singing and why?
Oh, well, yes, there are. Um, Almost where to start, and how to choose. But I would think, I love it that many choirs sing Rest Easy. I love that. And I hope that for all of us that we all can always do that. And I had a sweet experience with that early on. A friend, her friend's mother died, and my friend, had become Russian Orthodox in her, in her life, quite different from her mom and her growing up. And so here's her mom who had been active in a Protestant church, and here's Barbara who is Russian Orthodox, and it's like nobody's music is gonna be acceptable to everybody at the funeral, at the graveside. Barbara didn't want to hear ordinary, like well-known hymns, Protestant hymns. She was sure that that group was not going to be interested in her Russian Orthodox music. So she had heard me sing Rest Easy. I'd sung it for her. And she said, oh, that's what I would tell my mom when she was hurting. I would tell her, rest easy, rest easy. Would you sing that? So I did. So I sang that at her at her mom's funeral. And it it calmed everybody. It was something that everybody could hear, everybody could accept, that was loving. And so I love that. I love that song is sung.
Well,
Another
can I
one,
jump in there just for a second?
yeah.
I have to say that Rest Easy is a song that I sing at nearly every bedside that I go to.
Oh,
So it's such a treasure. And I wanted to mention to you that, recently all of the chapters were polled about what songs they sing most frequently at bedside.
yes.
And um, I'm so excited to tell you that the song that people mentioned most frequently was Rest Easy.
Oh, that's wonderful. That makes me
And
very happy.
and we're not ranking our songs, but it was so evident that
Oh,
Rest Easy is the most frequently chosen.
oh,
We felt it was really important to share that with you.
oh, thank
And you know, but not everyone who's listening knows that we're taking the songs that were determined to be the top 25 most frequently sung songs, and we're putting together a Threshold Choir audio collection, digital collection that will be made available later this year. And
you.
that collection is going to be entitled Rest Easy.
Oh no, I didn't know that. Oh,
Songs of Comfort from the Threshold Choir.
oh, oh, okay, you got me there. Kleenex.
Yeah. Well, you got us there
Oh,
because it's just the most perfect song. And I think not only does it calm the people that we sing for, it calms us in the mission. And that's what a really perfect song does for us in the moment.
mm,
So on behalf of all of us in Threshold Choir, I thank you for that wonderful
oh,
contribution.
oh, thank you. Thank you. Mm,
So I know that we've probably about come to the end of our time just because there's so much to say and we don't have that much time to say it in. But I do want to ask you now that Threshold Choir has been a part of your life for decades.
yeah.
Um, what are the primary gifts or highlights that you've received through this service of so many years?
Oh my, so many. And of course, everybody I think who is it's like as part of Threshold Choir knows the holiness of that service of being together, and also that feeling of of closeness, of intimacy, not only with the family and the person who's transitioning, but with each other, with this, the singing cohort. And that is so delicious and so enriching and so holy. It's so just sacred. I love that so much. And then in addition, there are several things that I treasure that I never would have ever, I possibly could ever have experienced except through Threshold Choir. And that, number one, is getting to know people from women from all over the country, all over, well, the world, even like you, Annie.
Mhm.
It's like I wouldn't know you except through Threshold Choir. And so many dear friends who I treasure. And it's a special friendship. It's a friendship on more levels somehow than many friendships that I have. It's I don't know, it's yummy. It's a yummy thing. I treasure.
Multifaceted.
Yes, yes, and able just to, it's like, oh, you're my sister. Here you are. I've just met you, and the recognition is, immediate, and the joy actually of that kind of connection is wonderful. And another thing is I had the opportunity to travel twice on Threshold Choir trips, and they were life changing. And I mean that life changing for me. The one to Bali and Thailand to sing for the elephants. It's like, oh, ooh, that exposure to cultures so radically different and so deeply wonderful. And that was marvelous. It was just marvelous. And then the other trip I got to go on was to Montserrat and singing for the Black Madonna in Montserrat. And that was marvelous. It's like, oh, those experiences were fabulous, both the travel part, which a lot of times was hysterical, it was just funny and sometimes challenging, but hey, travel's travel, but so expanding. And to be able to sing our way through it, it was like, wow, it's huge, huge.
Truly that thread of harmony and bringing all that to another part of the world. What an honor. And then get the experience of the local.
Yeah, really fabulous. So, thank you, Threshold Choir. Thank you, Kate.
Absolutely.
Oh, but I have to tell you one more thing if we have time. Another thing that I really treasure, and Kate is absolutely responsible because I was so shy at the beginning when I had written songs. First of all, I wrote them down and wrote them in a book, and it was Kate who said, okay, we got to get these recorded. Well, I could not pull that together. I just did not have the confidence, or even, I didn't even feel that our little choir could really bring that off. And so Kate said, okay, I'm going to help you. I'll bring singers from Northern California. You bring the ones from Southern California. You choose the place. So I found a place, wonderful, wonderful place in it's San Antonio, the San Antonio Mission. That was halfway between Northern and Southern California. It was perfect, gorgeous acoustic. We had rooms. Each of us had a little room. It was perfect, and so we did it, and it was so fun, and we were able to record everything wonderfully in 2 days, which was incredible for both CDs. It's amazing. Anyway, that was Kate, like having to hold my hand through it. And then also in learning how to teach the songs, I was just so unsure of myself and so lacking in confidence. And so Kate, the first time, said, Okay, well, I'll sit there with you and teach them for you, but you be right here. So it's like, okay, I watched her like a hawk. And, it's like, kind of, and then the next year she said, okay, we'll do it together. So then I gained a little confidence and I tried. And then the third year she said, okay, we'll do it together. But she showed up a little late. And by the time she got there, I had started. It's like, okay, I can do this now. So,
Wonder if
it's
she
like
did that by design.
probably because she knew me and she's always on time.
Yes, she is.
Yes. And so thank you, Kate. It's like, boy, has Kate been a huge gift in my life, but it even started before Threshold Choir. Oh, and that's the thing. It's like, so 2 years in, after we had met her, she even told us about this idea that she had of starting this service choir to sing at bedsides. And it's like, wow, that sounds really interesting, really good, but yike, you know. Well, for me to become ready for that, my mom had to die. I needed to go through that that experience and being with my mom most of that time and knowing then what what it was, what that holy place was. And then it was like, okay, we can do this now. And then it took a couple of years after we began, I believe, in 2006. So it'll be our 20th anniversary next year for the Santa Barbara chapter.
It's really important for you to share a little bit about Deeply Loved because I know you wrote that for your mom who is so dear to you. And it has a little bit of a story. Would you mind
I,
sharing that before we close today?
I would love to. And that would be the other song that I would hope would be sung, by people. Well, that one and Celtic Blessing, but mostly Deeply Loved. And I didn't really write it for my mom. Here's how it was after her death. And I was missing her so much because we had been very close. We were good friends, traveled together, and we just understood each other from early on. Um, and I woke up one morning and just felt like I am never going to be loved by anybody in the world as I was loved by my mom. And just, like grieving the loss of that love. And I woke up the next morning with Deeply Loved, the melody only, but Deeply Loved, the whole song. And my sense was that she had sung it to me, that she was telling me.
Oh, that's remarkable, beautiful, perfect.
Yep. And it turned out Kate was visiting and she was leaving, right? As this had just kind of come to me and I settled in and it's like I ran out and knocked on the window of her car and said, listen to this. and sang it to her.
Oh, it's lovely. And it gives us such insight into how you're tuned in and how you receive and then bring the songs to us. So thank you so much for everything that you've done for Threshold Choir. And I so treasure our relationship and knowing you. And thank you for all the ways that you've been a part of my Threshold Choir experience. It's been a real privilege and a pleasure today.
Thank you for me too, Annie. And all of that goes both ways. So thank
Thank you. And you are loved, loved.
you.
And we'll sign off from there. Bye-bye.